Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Coaches Chat webinar with head Notre Dame baseball coach Link Jarrett. Very excited you could join us. Happy you'd carve out a little bit of your afternoon time. My name is Brian Powell. I'm fortunate to serve on the Athletics Advancement and Monogram Club teams here at the university. This is the first time we've done this in a Zoom webinar format. So some of you may have joined us in the past. We've had some call-in shows with coaches. We haven't done one with baseball yet, so we're excited to have Link join us. But hopefully our format and this platform works well, and we'll have a great session with you today. We're doing this today for two reasons. One, it's just fun. Give you some insight into the program, get to talk some baseball here in June. We obviously got cut short a little bit this season, and so just glad you could join us and hear a little bit and engage in this way. We're all looking for fun stuff to do, and so that's number one. Number two is just a way to say thanks. Everybody on this call, you're either an alum of the program and put in your blood, sweat, and tears, and we appreciate that. And or you are financially supporting the program and Notre Dame athletics and ambassadors for the program in your communities and university. And so we thank you for all of that. We couldn't do what we do without you. You guys make Notre Dame what it is. And so one of the reasons we put this on is just to make sure we appreciate it. So thanks to everyone. All right, so on our call today, obviously, the man of the hour, Link Jarrett. I'll be brief on the bio so we can get into the questions. That's the heart of the matter today. But he's our 21st head coach in a 128-year history of the program. We stole him away from UNC Greensboro, where he had the most successful campaigns in that school's history and was conference coach of the year. Before that, he was at Auburn, where one of the years he was the assistant coach of the year in the SEC. Of course, his alma mater is Florida State. He also had a coaching year there, and so started under the legendary Mike Martin. And so everybody who followed Notre Dame baseball this year and over the last year knows we're lucky to have Coach Jarrett with us. So, Coach, thanks for joining us.
Well, Brian, thank you very much. And I can't express my gratitude deeply enough for the history of this program and what it means to sit here and lead such a storied baseball program. And the guys that are on the call built this into what it is. And obviously the contributions that are being made towards us continuing to grow are very critical. And it's truly an honor and a blessing to represent Notre Dame and lead the program and put this on. I know Sheets likes the green. I love it. I mean, I love everything about it. And, Brian, thank you for organizing this. And guys that are listening, thank you for all that you have done to get us to this moment. And thank you for what you're doing to help us charge on.
Thank you, Coach. Exciting times. Also a first. This is the first time we brought in outside expertise on this, which I'm really thrilled about. Coach Jeremy Sheetinger, I have some personal history, which is another story for another day. But when I asked Coach Jarrett, hey, who's a guy on the national scene that really knows you well and knows college baseball and can have the best conversation with you? He said, well, you got to get my guy Sheets. So Coach Sheetinger Sheets runs a national podcast that's very successful called Dugout Chatter. You need to look that up if you haven't seen it. It's a very successful voice in the college baseball world. He's the head coach at Georgia Gwinnett College, a powerful NAIA program where he took over down there last year. He's coached at many levels, D1, D2, D3, and has worked for the Atlanta Braves. And as of today, he's also the new assistant coach with the Canes 16U, one of the best summer teams out there in all of America. So we're happy to have Jeremy Sheetinger with us, and he's going to kind of run our interview today. I'm going to help him monitor the chat situation if you want to use the chat function on your webinar. But we're just going to turn it over, have some good Notre Dame talk, some good baseball talk, and listen in. So, Sheets, thanks for joining us.
Awesome. We appreciate you, Brian. Thanks for having me on. And obviously, Link, I appreciate the opportunity. Go Irish. And I'm excited to have a fantastic conversation today. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, on behalf of Notre Dame Athletics and obviously Link in this interview, we're going to be feeding off the questions that you guys put in on the registration form. Plus, the chat is wide open. I'll be monitoring those as well. So if we go into a question and you want to follow up or have something to remark to, I'll make sure I look over. And if I can add that into the show, I'll do that as well. Now, let's get this thing rolling downhill. First and foremost, Link, how's the weather in South Bend going today?
It's pretty nice out there today. It's a spring/fall feel in the air today.
Love it. Love it. Obviously, fantastic college town. Spent some time there, and I'm jealous. I wish I could be there hanging out with this. Would have been fun in person, but I'm excited to do this, and I want to get into this right away because I think it sets the tone for everything else is going to fall from. And I want you to go into talking about taking over there at Notre Dame, this being a destination job, this being one of the most sought-after positions in college baseball based on the rich history that's inside this university. Talk about that transition, leaving a program that you have built up from the ground and we're leading statistically nationally, which we'll go into later, but that there's still a little bit of fear taking over this, elevated of a job.
Sheets, there is. You want to look at a program and think about the potential and how you can grow it.
Sure.
And the funny part of that is when this job came open last summer, my son, who actually plays at NC State, he told my wife, he's like, Mom, Dad's going to be the coach at Notre Dame. He felt it like that quickly. He didn't say that to me because there was a lot of work that needed to be done to get to the point of becoming the coach.
Sure.
I looked at just tremendous potential and opportunity. I loved everything that Notre Dame represented. The year that I did not go to the College World Series as a player, I went 3 times. The 1 year I did not go, Notre Dame actually beat us in the regional. And part of me always thought that those guys carried themselves with such class. I knew the student aspect of what went on at Notre Dame. This is from the other dugout, kind of looking into their world. I felt like they were the best students and obviously, the best athletes. And that combination just always intrigued me. And I enjoy being around people that want to excel in those areas at this age. It's a very unique dynamic. They're exceptional people from exceptional families. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame, take the baseball out of it. It's such a special place. The spiritual faith-based nature of Notre Dame, there's just such a great feel when you walk down by the grotto and the basilica. We walked down there today.
Sure.
And then just the beauty and the tradition of everything that it represents, it was phenomenal. So the decision was very easy. Getting to the point where they were asking you to be the coach, not so easy. You have to go through a lot and very in-depth interview situation that worked out great. But it was funny that right out of the gate, my son kind of pulled my wife aside and said, Dad's going to be the coach of Notre Dame. Good. So it was hard to leave Greensboro, but when I went to Greensboro from Auburn, I obviously left a situation in the SEC very good. I saw a program that had tremendous potential, great, campus, an area of the country that there's plenty of good baseball, just right outside your back door to recruit. So I saw potential there, and it evolved into what I had hoped it would turn into. And now you have to flip the script and take the same attitude and measure into getting Notre Dame back where we belong.
That's it. Oh, that's awesome. And I love the fact you bring that up because that was obviously in my head of the transition from coming from being an SEC assistant coach to then being a mid-major head coach. There's already a maturation process and an adjustment period within that, becoming a head coach and running the program the way you want, but it's on a mid-major level. Now you're moving up from head coach to head coach, but you're moving from mid-major to high-profile institutions. So what are the adjustments that you've made coming into this role there at Notre Dame?
Well, going from the SEC to Greensboro, there's financial ramifications that you have to be very aware of. Sure. And I always felt that as our game grows, which it's growing, and people like you have helped so much with the ABCA and coaching and all the things you do to promote it, I wanted to have head coaching experience before I was presented with a situation that I felt like needed true grasp and understanding of how to manage a staff, how to manage a team, how to manage a game, how to manage the facility. And so that transition was easier for me because I had experienced it for 7 years. When you look at the actual program itself, I didn't bring my staff with me. My staff at Greensboro, Jerry Edwards, Joey Holcomb, great coaches, but the model of recruitment and what we were doing was so much different that it wasn't really the right fit. So you have to coach your coaches on every dimension of the game. What your pitcher catcher communication is, your bunt defenses, your first and thirds, your cuts and relays, fly ball communication, pickoffs and rundowns. So I walked into a situation where there were 50 people. Your strength and conditioning coach, how do you want to warm up? What days do you want to lift? Your trainer, Like, what do you want my involvement to be as your athletic trainer? Do you want me in every team meeting? Do you want me not to go on the field? So it's teaching every dimension of a program from ground zero, because I knew nobody knew me. So that's the trickiest part of taking something over. All of your offensive fundamentals and thoughts and signs and how you communicate and the verbiage, and then you have to get into breaking it down to each individual guy, because the team knowing what I'm talking about is one thing, but me helping each individual is, when you really dig deep, that's what it's all about. But the adjustment was just, everything was so new in the sense of urgency, and you put the pressure on yourself. Like, you want to be good immediately. So how quickly can you implement and direct all of these different facets? That was the biggest adjustment, is just the pace and aggression of trying to implement.
So awesome. It's really cool to hear you talk through this. And again, as many of you on this call will figure out, I'm a huge fan of Link, man, and our friendship means the world to me. But I love his passion. I love the way he can detail some stuff out. And you really want to get to the crux of this. Let's get this rolling downhill when we're talking about building the program, because you walk into a situation where you got a chance to take a step up and then again continue to move up the ladder of college baseball. So in your estimation, when you walk in, you look at the Notre Dame baseball program, what are the stages or the phases that you see that you're going to pay attention to and really invest in for program development?
Right. Well, and I really fabricated this through 20 years of watching programs evolve with me in them every day. And there were 5 things that clearly stood out to me. Number one is how you evaluate. Now, there's players obviously on our team right now that I did not recruit, I did not evaluate. So let's take that out of it for a second. But as you build, your ability to evaluate and find the right tools that fit what you're trying to do on the mound. Like, what are your starting pitchers? What are you looking for in a guy that potentially could become a starter? What do you look for in a guy that could be a reliever? And the relievers are just as important, if not more, than the starters in the way the game is played now. And I agree. Where do you build roster depth? You got to stay in the middle of the field. And, our catching wasn't good enough this year. So when you look up the middle, the catching, the pitching, the middle infield capability, and then somebody that's a lockdown center fielder, like, you have to evaluate those areas very well, or else your roster, you can't clog things up with guys that have to go to the corners of the field. So evaluation is number one. You can be a good evaluator and a bad recruiter and not end up with good players. Recruiting is convincing somebody to come to your school. And if you're recruiting and evaluating right, they're going to have options. And you have to do a good job of selling what your school, your program is about. And so that's recruitment. So evaluation 1, recruitment 2. But if you're not lining those up properly, if you're a great evaluator and a terrible recruiter, you're going to have a mess.
No doubt.
If you're a bad evaluator and a great recruiter, you're essentially going to recruit bad players. No doubt. So those two go hand in hand. But when I talk about this, there's a distinct difference in those two. They're not – recruiting is not – evaluating properly is one thing, and getting them to campus is the next. Player development. So once they're in, now you can bring our current guys back in. It's a plan of attack for the practices. And how do you structure batting practice? What do you want the bullpens to look like? How many days a week do we want to throw bullpens? What does our PFP sequencing look like? So the player development is then hopefully you've evaluated and recruited, and now you have to build their athletic capabilities. It's your weight room sessions. It's how many days do you lift? When do you give them a day off? What calendar do you build? So number 3 is player development. And as a coach, we're going through that, every day on the field. Program development is more big picture stuff. What I'm doing right now essentially is it's program development. It helps build and fuel the fire of the program and the culture. Program development your scheduling. Like, do you play a good schedule? Give the guys a good experience. Does it give the program the visibility it needs, but maybe not at a level that's too difficult to survive, with wins and losses early on in the season before conference. And then your calendar of when you practice. And that's a tough thing to build. But program development, it might mesh a little bit into player development at times, building the facility the right way. That's very important. But as I build the facility, program development, the player development piece is on the forefront of my mind, because what I want to do with my facility, if it helps the players become better, then the wins and the other things will happen, as opposed to worried maybe about the aesthetics initially. Let's worry about getting the players better. Then I think you can grow, and the other treats eventually come with it. And then game management would be the fifth one. At some point, all of this stuff is done, and you're exchanging lineups at home plate with the other team, and you have to find ways to win those games. So then, at that it's then the strategy and pushing the right buttons and making the right moves on the mound, and when do you take your starter out, and who are you going to bring in, and who's warming up in the bullpen. Like, the actual game management piece does have a big impact on the outcome, no doubt. But so does who you recruited. So does how you develop them. So when you look at those 5 pieces and you mesh it together properly, man, you got a beautiful thing in your hands. And it does take time, never ending.
That's awesome. I'm going to start counting chills on my arms, if that's okay, because I'm starting to get them every time you talk through this stuff. It's awesome. I think I can't see everybody on the call, but I'm guessing if I could, I would notice that there's a lot of competitive people on the phone call. Those that really want to see Notre Dame baseball get back to, again, we're talking years ago, but the ability to approach a College World Series environment. And so I know that's on the forefront of your mind. How can you incrementally work your way towards that? So let's go in 2 different phases. Let's start with some short-term and then maybe some long-term goals. We can break that down in like maybe a 3 to 5 year stance of what immediate might show the folks on this call, and to show yourself in terms of where you see this program going, that says we're on the right track. And then long-term, where do you see this program having the capability to go?
Yeah, Sheets. This question came up in various avenues on the list of questions that were sent in. And when you get to a new job, it takes you a little while to figure out who's who and what their capabilities are and what positions these guys belong in. So when I got here, I felt like there were some moves independent of the personnel, but what we were doing with the personnel we had, that we had to try to alter to not repeat what had happened statistically and whatnot in previous years. So trying to find out of the gate the spots on the baseball field and the roles on the mound where these guys seem to match up with my beliefs was number one. So when we talk about goals, to be honest with you, Sheets, I didn't go any further than the first game. Like, let me put the best product on the field for game number 1 on Friday afternoon that I can possibly put out there.
Sure.
Now, they're not going to be in the same positions they were in last year. It may be some of the same guys, but I knew we had to make some adjustments. That's as far as I took it when I got the job. And I've never been good at looking too far ahead because I feel like I'm shortchanging some of the stuff that's in front of me.
No doubt.
I didn't know who the best players were going to be. I can read the stats, but until you get your hands in there and work with them and put them in maybe a different position or a different role, like that's player development, and then it goes into game management. So just let me get to game 1, and then when the scoreboard's on and there's somebody else in the other dugout, then you start to learn a little bit more about the guys. And we got better every weekend. And maybe nationally what people thought a good goal for Notre Dame would be going into the 2020 season it probably changed as much as anything could change in 13 games in 4 weeks. It really did. My goal, as I look, even the year we just had to shut down, how do you get this team in a regional? How do you position yourself? Couldn't do anything about the schedule, but how do I use these guys to get through these weekends, giving yourself a chance to win every one of these series on the weekend? If you do that, you have a chance to find yourself in the top 30 of the RPI, have a chance to be ranked.
Right.
Then essentially my goal of getting this program into regionals, and you'd like to be in that conversation every single year.
Yep.
Now, there's a lot of variables, and everybody in college baseball deals with the variables of the draft and the injuries, but I feel like with what we offer with our brand, we should be able to be in the discussion every year to be in regionals, period. So that's, again, once I saw what we were able to do, that was realistic for us this season. And I don't want that to change. Like when we had to shut it down, we're ranked and we're in the top 30 in the RPI. And you know what? We had a lot of work to do, but it was good for the guys to taste what it's like to be really good. And you have to learn how to be really good and handle being good. Some people can't handle success. Some people can't handle failure well enough. It's fun to learn how to handle success. Once you can do it, then you're in the conversation every single year for an at-large bid or hosting. Like we can host here, and that's really my goal is to have this team in the national discussion every single year as a top 30 RPI team. I know it's hard. I know who's on the schedule when you're in the ACC.
Sure.
It's tough, but that also gives you the RPI propulsion that you need if you compete.
That's outstanding. Eddie Lund just put this in, and I think it kind of fits in here before we move on to recruiting, which the other questions do as well. But he's asking about maybe defining the culture. So if I were a Notre Dame baseball player and I walk into that locker room on a daily basis, what's the culture that you've really tried to create there? What's it sound like? What's it feel like? What's it taste like in there?
Well, you're dealing with very high-level kids. High level.
Mm-hmm.
We lacked attention to detail. That was one thing I felt like I noticed. We lacked that intense attention to detail. So everything that we do as a staff, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but you want to take care of the little pieces of what's going on every day when you're in the cage, and how the bullpen stuff is done, how the catcher's set up. Like if we need you in a 4 zone, that is between the black of the outside corner and that very outside 5th of the plate. It's not the outside 3rd. We want him to throw the ball on the black. If he gets a little bit of the plate, fine. 5 zone is further. So I wanted that to be a cultural dynamic of our program. Very good at the finer points. And I told our guys, I have a wife and a daughter and a son, and Chuck has a daughter and a newborn son, and Rich has 2 girls. If any one of these ladies walks in our clubhouse at any time in the team room, what we're saying, how we are saying things, it should never matter who walks in. So we're always going to conduct ourselves at the highest level. We talk a lot about integrity. Other programs do. But we try to set that example and raise the bar for how we do everything. And, again, I feel like the attention to detail was what was the biggest push as I sensed where we were after 3 weeks of fall practice. And, I think we got in there a little bit and moved the needle in those areas. But because our guys are they're just such good people.
Sure.
Their backgrounds are so rich. They're just good quality, wholesome families and people. So, the cultural dimension, it was more the baseball oriented culture that I needed to bring along. Yeah.
That's outstanding. Okay, we're going to move into this recruiting sphere, and I know there's a lot of questions that are coming in. A lot of attention comes to this. Link, how have you and your staff come out of COVID and roster management, which is leading into this recruiting, in terms of getting the players that you know you're going to need to make the jumps in terms of where this program can go that you know you want to make happen? How's recruiting going? Give us the topical taste, and then we'll move our way down.
Our recruiting has been really good. And there's an excitement about what we're doing, and the school helps recruit itself. You do have to be careful. This is evaluation, because there are so many people that would give anything to come to Notre Dame. That doesn't always mean they're the player that can help you win ACC weekend games. So you have to be smart. Never went through anything like what's going on with the roster right now. With everybody getting their year essentially back.
Is there a handbook for that?
Huh?
Is there a handbook for that anywhere? Because I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm writing it as we go. And then each school has different pieces of how they adopt or interpret or apply some of those rules. I will tell you what was huge for us here, and I think it was one of our most untapped resources from a recruiting standpoint, are the grad transfers. Now, you know, it's a little complicated how they actually use the bonus year that everybody's getting, but essentially a graduated student can play immediately if they want to go to grad school. So the sit out piece that normally occurs when you transfer it doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply in any sports. You see it in football, basketball, you see it in softball, you see it in all the sports. But we got, I guess, 5 incoming grad transfer players. So that maturity and experience, when you inject them into an already fairly experienced team, is remarkable. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. Got a kid from UCF, left-handed pitcher from UCF, very competitive, very good, one of their best, if not their best arm. The Ivy League Pitcher of the Year from Penn is a grad student that's coming. John Michael Bertrand, brothers on the football team, he was on his way to be the Southern Conference Pitcher of the Year in the league where I coach at UNC Greensboro. Left-handed pitcher, very competitive, very experienced. James Holbert from Richmond, a left-handed pitcher, just exceptional stuff, had come off an injury, so he never really even came back into form in our shortened season. And then a catcher outfielder, Alex Brait, left-handed batter from Florida Gulf Coast. When you pump that kind of recruiting in there, that's game-changing stuff. Now, you want your freshmen to be good. Ryan Litch, Brady Gump, the local guys that are coming, they're going to be good players. But when you have this type of older talent that's out there on the scene, you're either going to get them or you're going to have to try to beat them. And some of this happened way before the season shut down. Some of it happened a little later. But, man, that's going to be a fun injection of talent. They're still new. So they're going to be learning all of the things I talked about earlier on the transition. Like, they're going to have to go through learning our system, but it's usually easier for guys that have been in college for 4 years than a high school kid. And we go all over the country, Sheets. We have to. That's why I hired who I hired on my staff. They're great recruiters. Rich Wallace, 3 private school recruiting experiences, built championship rosters. We've got kids from Huntington Beach to Panama City Beach, Florida. I mean, from California to Florida,
Sure.
We have to cover the whole thing. And that's part of what Notre Dame demands. And then when you're recruiting the upper, I guess you would say, 5% of students that play baseball, so you've trimmed your pool just because of your admission situation. So you better comb the country. And we've got kids from the Northeast and Georgia and Virginia and California, and it's the whole country. The challenges, people ask about challenges of our recruiting. I will say that it hasn't been like a game changer in a negative way. But when you're trying to talk to younger kids, if your son's in 10th grade and we're recruiting some 9th graders, knowing what kind of student you have to be to get into Notre Dame, like as a family, right? You think you're doing a good job with raising your kid right and giving them the right experience academically, but when they're a year or two away from taking a standardized test, and you really don't know if the 9th grade GPA is what you want to bank on, sometimes knowing that the admissions process down the line is going to take, like, you're years away. So you're just trusting that Timmy is going to do the job in the classroom and Timmy's going to make a really good ACT, SAT score and he's going to be fine. So that's a little tricky, but it hasn't been something that has stopped us. And with the older grad guys and some of the other transfers that we've got coming in, you know, their time frame is shorter and they're such good students coming from some of these schools. They excelled already. Easy transition for them.
That's awesome. Well, if you're looking for a catcher, I guess Chris Flynn wants to come out of retirement. He's on the call with us, and he said he might be able to get in a couple squats for you. I want to come back to one challenge because it did come up in our chat, and I think it is an interesting conversation. You know, when you're dealing with players from the Northeast or North or South Bend area or across that front, that conversation may be a little bit different if you're really working to recruit that Notre Dame student athlete out of the state of Florida or Georgia or California or Texas. How are you going into those conversations, attracting a player from a warmer climate to South Bend?
Well, most of our guys, if we're just going to be honest about it, most of our guys come visit in the fall and the summer. And that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
You know, you come into a football game in October, November, we're practicing, it's beautiful. In spite of that, like, they know that it's going to be tough. I like to explain to them how we use our cages. Our cages have mounds. We go down to Loftus, the indoor football field. Like, we explain that we get this facility every day. We can drop down the net. We can hit in there. We've got the same mound that we bring out of the storage room in Loftus and put it out. We measure everything out. We've got bullpen mounds. So if you are creative, you're going to get more reps because everything's got to stay on point.
Sure.
You're going to get a little more than maybe if it's just the same old thing and you open up the field and you practice year round. Like, as coaches, you have to be very creative. And we have ways and charts and things that we do with our technology that we try to evaluate player development stuff and build them even when you are indoors. And I say this a lot, you know, Greensboro is, I guess you could say, more of a southern climate, but, you know, our field at Notre Dame is turf and the indoor stuff is turf.
Mm-hmm.
There were times at Notre Dame, at Greensboro, at Auburn, at East Carolina, places you would think you can go practice. You didn't know if you were going to practice, and if you didn't handle it, you weren't going on that field.
Sure.
Right? You had the tarp and the snow on the tarp and the rain, and sometimes it was harder to figure out if you could practice. I will tell you this, at this preseason was the first time in my 20 years I did exactly what I wanted to do in the preseason because we were not going to miss a day. If you could go outside, it was great. But if you had to stay inside, you know what? I could look right down my practice plan for the month of January, and I could just check it off every day. At Greensboro, you might go 5 days and you can't get on the field. Mm-hmm. So if you're not equipped to deal with the elements, you can't. We are well equipped and prepared, and I actually think it helped us, and it helped me because I had more time in that setting. You know, the cages, 5 cages, they're but you can really, it's like a classroom.
Yes, it is.
You can have 15 hitters in there or 15 pitchers, and everybody can hear what you're saying, and they are locked in. So it can be a good developmental tool, and that's how we present it.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to come back to the baseball talk. But I do think these are two considerations that all of us, especially in the college athletic space, are dealing with. And I am intrigued to see how you're looking through this class. But, you know, COVID is one thing, but then the social unrest that's come, you know, from this and other happenings around the world. and they've created some challenges. And I think for college athletics, we're having to look at this through a different lens. And as our kids approach coming back to campus in August, how have those conversations gone for you? Maybe what are some of the adjustments you might make as a coach coming back into August?
Yeah, we're in a situation in our world where, I don't think any of us ever envisioned.
Sure.
The social unrest is very difficult to watch. And what I've learned in listening, I guess that's the first thing I've learned, is that we have to listen. We have to listen more closely. We have to be more empathetic. We have to put ourselves in other people's mind and shoot and listen and listen. And that was my message to my guys. I called every one of my players, and what I did, Sheets, I thought about it for a couple of days because I wanted to get their – these are brilliant kids. Like, I wanted their insight on this.
Yeah.
And, we don't have an African-American on our team right now. We have one committed, but he's not here yet. So I talked to each one of our players, and I said, Sheets, all right, who's a good friend of yours on the team? And he'd say, Scott. So I'd say, all right, Sheets, add Scott to the call and then buzz me back in. So I let them in a group, like with one of their buddies. I talked to them, and it was about 7 hours of calls in pairs. I did 2 calls in a group of 3 with myself. And that was the message from these very sharp guys as coach. Like, we're not listening well enough as a society to what's going on. And then after thinking about it, I called one of my favorite players I've ever coached, Corey Kemp. I coached him at East Carolina, Conference Player of the Year, brothers in the big leagues. And we had a heart-to-heart talk about what his experience was. And, the modern day, I guess, systematic profiling that we hear it, but I hadn't listened to him explain this to me before, nor had I asked, and that's probably my fault. And I want to share these messages with my guys when we can get back and really have a heart-to-heart talk. Notre Dame has done some amazing events on campus to support being better socially with what's going on. And our campus will be different. And I think voices were being heard before. We just weren't listening to them well enough. And I think we've learned that. Sheets, the coronavirus and assessing how you walk in the locker room, and the football team, they're here.
Yeah.
How they get dressed for their group work, the spacing in between the lockers, like how many football guys can get dressed, how many baseball guys can get dressed, how many can we lift at one time, where are they going to lift, how do you move the equipment around in the weight room so you have the proper spacing. Like it or not, this is the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Our athletic director, Jack Swarbrick's phenomenal leader. He said, I talked to him the other day, he said, Link, we put 50,000 signs up on our campus in the last 2 weeks to try to keep your social distance, wear the face mask, wash your hands, sanitize. That's what we're trying to do in order to keep this fall semester rolling like it's supposed to. And as coaches, we have to model the right behavior and take the steps we're asking them to take so that we don't revisit what happened in the spring semester. So there's a lot of work with you talked about playbook, man, there's no playbook right now for either of these. We're just putting our best foot forward.
I think it's a touch back on those points, compassion and fighting for empathy in a lot of regards, and certainly the sympathetic ear are definitely down the right path. It's going to be a difficult road to hoe here as we get back into the fall semester, but with smart people, we're going to move past it. We're going to move through it, and I know our kids are excited to get back, as yours are as well. Let's go back to baseball, man, and this is the fun part because we get to talk a little bit about really, I'm like throwing fastballs at your belt here, but talking about the offensive success that you guys have had, Link. You have been able to put together one of the top offenses in the country literally multiple years in a row. I mean, at least the last 5 at UNCG, and what your group at Auburn. I was on the brunt end of that when I was at Kentucky, and I watched it in person. And it's awesome to see the way that you've led offenses. But I know there's been some growth inside that in terms of landing at a place of, man, I'm starting to, and speaking for you, I'm starting to see college baseball in this way. If we approach it offensively, here's how we'll gain the most success. Why don't you open that up of what you guys do offensively there with the Irish?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you are saying offense, because it essentially is finding ways to score. Like any offense in any sport is finding ways to score. And people always used to ask me about hitting. Hitting. Like, talk about hitting. Well, hitting is just one part of the offense.
No.
You can have some good hitters, but that doesn't necessarily mean your offense is good. So I try to get our guys to understand that the base running, how we lead off, our short game, like the guys that need to be able to bunt, we have to be able to use that weapon.
Yep.
Have to. That's part of offense. Your signs in your playbook, like the situational hitting and the hit and run when you're taking off-speed pitches and moving runners, and like we break all that down and we work on it. So our batting practice stuff essentially is offensive. The guy that's hitting he's working on his hitting, but he's also implementing our offensive components. The guys on the bases are working on certain things. The guys in the cage are doing certain things. So it's the comprehensive package of all the traits and skills that you're trying to get the players to hone that really creates a good offense. I individualize skill development because you as a hitter might need something totally different than Nico Cavadas as a hitter.
Absolutely.
Spencer Myers, who led off for us, switch hitter, one of the best base, led the country in stolen bases this year. I mean, totally different than Nico Cavadas, who is going to have the most power of any hitter in college baseball. He is. So having them work on the same stuff is just counterproductive. Now, they need to understand the same verbiage and language and base running ideas and signs, but they're not working on the same stuff from a skill standpoint. So I think it's identifying what each member of your team needs skill-wise, and then throwing that into your playbook and having the whole group understand what this playbook's all about and why we're push bunting here or why we're trying to steal third with this guy at the plate. So it's so – when I say attention to detail, like getting them to understand the depth of just the bunting game for the guys that need to do it, it's good stuff. So that's what makes a dynamic team is you have different ways to beat people. You have guys that can hit for power. You have some guys that can hit for average. You find ways to get on base. You run the bases. You can steal bases. And you hit situationally. And to be honest with you, Sheets, I'm completely out on the thought, like in the big leagues, that the strikeout is okay. Yeah. It's not. Like, you know just as well as I do in our game, putting that ball in play is very important when you have 2 strikes. Like, we're not going up there to try to avoid the strikeout. But if you get 2 strikes, then you're trying to avoid the strikeout. So, but that's in a nutshell, that's some of our offensive thought.
That's great. I know as an offensive guy throughout all of your career, and we do this, we look at the pitching staff. We understand the bigger picture, but obviously when you're an assistant, you're centrally focused on one aspect of the game. You invest your time there. As a head coach, that global perspective, man, is so great because you get a chance to notice all the various buckets you have to spend time and energy in. And certainly on the other side of the baseball, you've got to spend time managing that pitching staff along with your pitching coach and say, hey, there's some adjustments we can make that may benefit the team in terms of maximizing the talent that we have. And then yesterday on our call, you were mentioning the fact that you made a creative decision to move some talent out of a starter position and maybe use them in a different role in the back end of your bullpen. You want to open that up?
Yeah. I guess I spent so much time with the pitchers in the fall and the preseason because I was going to have to make some really tough decisions on who pitches on Friday night and who doesn't. And one guy's going out there on Friday night and 16 of them are not. So just my presence in watching what they're doing and learning them was so important to me. Because they only get to throw so many pitches in a session. To be honest with you, I can go watch guys hit a lot easier than I can watch guys throw live. So that's why my pitching coach always handles my practice planning with me, because it ultimately revolves around what the pitching is doing that day. And I want to be sure that I can watch it. As much as I'm known for the offensive stuff, the pitching is what really can win you games if you pitch at a high level. You can't out-hit bad pitching. You can't outscore it. The toughest thing we had to decide was Joe Boyle, who throws 100, 103 miles an hour, 5th round draft. Everybody probably thought, why don't you start that guy and let him grow and develop into, maybe it works out. It had not clicked for him in previous years. And it was starting to click, but I didn't think it was fair to him or our team to let him go out there and start a game. If he didn't quite have it, then you're having to manage the rest of that game in a mechanism you're not prepared to get the bullpen going in the first inning. You're not. And Tommy Vale, when this thing shut down, you might have put him in the top 5 or so in production of all arms in the country. Like, he was that good. So bringing those 2 guys in, who both had draft thoughts and hopes and did well in the Cape, to tell them that I need you to buy into helping our team. Starting you is not the best thing for our team, okay? And here's why. If we get into a mess in the middle of that game or later in that game, I'm talking to the 2 guys that can get us out of that mess. And if we get out of that mess and hold on where we are, we have a good chance to win that game, because you 2 have a chance to make us better as the game deepens, where most of the other teams, it might go the other way until you get to that one guy at the end that might be similar to the 2 guys I'm talking about. And it was about a 30-minute explanation with me leading it, but Chuck, our pitching coach, was right there, and he was on board. And I said, guys, you can impact, if we do this, you can impact 30 to 32 of our games. If you start, what are we going to play, 14 weeks? You're going to affect. So being maybe our 2 most dynamic pitchers, if I have you available to help us 60 to 70 times, that gives us our best chance. And I don't think they had ever looked at it that way in their time. But what we did is we groomed them to start, because I said, guys, you may not start the game inning 1, but you may start in the 5th inning with the bases loaded.
There you go.
Strike that guy out and finish the game. So we wanted to build their pitch count, in essence, to prepare them for longer outings. And sometimes they threw as much as the starter. Their outing just started in the middle of a mess because they could strike people out, and it worked.
That is brilliant. I love that. I think for the folks on the call, and I also think I'm interested to hear your take on this. This is an odd year. I was talking with my assistant coach this morning about it. We got a 5-round draft. Now they've got caps on free agent signings, and certainly everyone getting a year back, the year of the grad transfer, all those things that are really changing the dynamic of what could happen and what college baseball will look like moving. And it's across all levels, the Division I level all the way down through. Open that up. What do you think the talent level is going to look like this season as you walk into the 21 schedule?
It'll be the best talent in the history of college baseball.
Fact.
I really believe that.
Agree.
You can't lump as much into what walks into that locker room in the fall as you lumped into what's going on in the last 3 or 4 months. Like, it's never happened. Probably, I hope it'll never happen again. I really thought, Sheets, we would lose 5 or 6 guys off our team, and you're thinking, like, the scouts are talking to a couple of your incoming recruits, and when they're having multiple meetings with organizations those guys aren't going to waste their time unless there's a chance. Now,
Sure.
some of those kids never really got to get into their season enough, the high school kids, so you didn't really have a true measurement of how well they were doing or what the velocity looked like. They just never got that far.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, top to bottom, just draft alone, remarkable, like who's going to be back and who didn't sign out of high school. And then the additional year, So I think one of our guys knew they knew they were going to get another year to be juniors. So if I'm not getting the money I wanted, why would I sign? So it almost the COVID year almost piggybacked on top to make the draft a 5-round draft tough. Like some of the guys that they thought they were going to be able to draft and sign wouldn't sign.
Right.
So it's going to be really, if you enjoy watching college baseball, you will never see it played at this level again, in my opinion.
I agree completely. I want to go to this. I have 2 more questions for you. One comes from a baseball alum, Todd Stroop, and I think it's a great question. And I love the way that Brian kicked it off, talking about some of the endowments and certainly the facility upgrades. What do you think, Notre Dame, looking at the facility and what you have to deal with now, what do you think can be done or should be on the forefront of thought of doing things differently that'll help us compete inside the arms race, but also what's happening down south and out west?
Yeah. What I want to do is connect, like they built our team lounge, and John and Kathy Murphy helped build that, funded it. Beautiful team lounge. Our indoor cage building is almost, it looks to me like it wants to connect with our team lounge somehow. Our training room, our guys either go to the training room, like the main training room where football is, it's 500 yards away, like kind of towards the middle of campus,
Mm-hmm.
or like pre-practice or pre-game, our trainer's little satellite training room is actually on the opposite side of our stadium as the players' locker room.
Mm.
So, and it's also on the opposite side of campus of where the guys are migrating from to actually get to our stadium. So I don't know if you've ever seen it. The guys on the call know what I'm talking about. I want to try to connect the lounge area to the indoor building where the training room can be in there, and we can have a more pitching dedicated type arm care center.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be a massive area, but just something that consolidates what an athlete has to do to go from the locker room, training room, team lounge, training room cage, arm care room, cage. That would be what I've expressed to everybody that's asked me on what's the next phase. The first phase is the bullpen. That was supposed to start, which Steve Finelli graciously funded for us. That was supposed to happen May 11th. And then when everything shut down, they're not going to engage in any new construction right now. It's going to happen, but our bullpen, instead of 2 mounds in a corridor, like right beside the field, we have plenty of space to join the bullpen to the indoor building. So I'm trying to stretch everything towards our indoor cage building, which is a nice space. Like, it's big.
Yeah.
But that's what I see. And again, player development first. And then I want to address the first base side of our area, and the kind of the right field first base bleacher area it's not up to speed aesthetically. So the next thing, big ticket, would be duplicating the team lounge structure, because everything's symmetrical.
Yeah.
So you kind of have that stamp and the blueprint for that space. You put it over on the first base side, then that becomes kind of an office area where we're not in the Joyce basketball arena anymore. Like, our stadium also kind of becomes our home and is more equipped for like a team meeting space. I don't like to use the lounge as a meeting area because that's their time to relax and enjoy that space. I didn't feel like it transitioned well from them watching TV and studying to us having a team meeting about cutoffs and relays. It's their own relaxation home more so than what I would do on the other side, which is a little more instructional and our office space.
That's fantastic. Okay, last question I got for you, and Brian, I'll be concluding this interview, but I'm Link. I'm gonna play at your heartstrings real quick. You ready?
I hope so, Sheets.
Yes.
You're gonna get me here.
And I might get myself. I just, I have been fortunate to work a number of camps up there. We ran a coaching clinic up there, Barnstormers event a few years ago, and I've been to some football games. And I just, I walk across there as a pseudo Notre Dame fan. I'm wearing the hat because I'm at the football game. But man, to wake up each day and put on that ND and to be part of such a rich history across the college athletic scene, to be part of that staff, Link, how many moments walking over the grotto, like you mentioned this morning, how many pinch yourself moments do you have, and what are the emotions that maybe come up through that?
I told my wife the other day, I said, I'm the coach at the best university in the world.
No doubt.
And it hits me every day. I can't, when you put this on, like each time you pick it up and put it on, I have the chills right now talking about it. Like it represents the best of the best of the best in every dimension. And it means the world to me. I've had a lot of good jobs, don't get me wrong, but this has always been to me very special. And it hit me in 1993 when we played them, and there was something about it that I really respected and liked. And for the guys on the call, they laid the foundation of this. Like, they're the best of the best, and to be the face of that type of group and that type of university, like it means everything to me. So I'm going to give it, everything I know to do to try to continue to build it and get us back in the national spotlight where we belong.
That's awesome. That's what we got, Coach Powell.
Wow, what a great session. I can't tell you all, I was getting so many texts throughout that, man. People were enjoying that so much. Not just for Coach Jarrett, by the way. Sheets, we have to bring you back. You might need to study up Notre Dame women's basketball, swimming, soccer.
The process has begun.
Sheets is a talented man. He's talented. You're so good at this.
Yeah.
You should go no video, more of a voice than face. But hey, I enjoy it either way.
I'm gonna plug your podcast one more time, Dugout Chatter. So you got to check it out. It was out. It's outstanding stuff. I just started listening to it once your name came up for this. So it's been great. And Coach, love the energy, love the detail. People that didn't know you, we're just raving on different things, and then people that already know you. So this is why I love this guy. So appreciate all that. Thank you for not having our guys swing from their heels with 2 strikes. As a baseball guy, I appreciate that too. Let's put it in play and have some fun. And then just for everybody on the call, again, just thank you so much. I mean, we do this for you. This went so well. Maybe we'll make this an annual event, and it was definitely worth the time. I learned a ton. And thank you all for considering to think about, Rockne baseball giving, you Monogram folks out there doing your Rockne contributions. And then also for all the former players, if you didn't see our Era Extended initiative launch last week, we're trying to engage as many ways we can with new podcast stuff, career services. Go back, check your email out, or get a hold of us. We want to serve you the best we can through all your time at and post Notre Dame. So with that, we'll conclude this. Appreciate it. I do think we'll have a video recording of this. And so if people want to request that from us later, reach out to us. Happy to share it. You can share it with your other baseball friends. And that's all we have for today. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Sheets. Everybody have a good day.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right.
Sheets, thanks, buddy. Awesome.
My pleasure.